Let's talk about success. Okay, that's my old school. Sadly, it's shut down now, like many private schools have. But I spent more time in a state school than in a private school. I actually started off in a state school called Christchurch in Armley, where I was born in Armley, and then Armley Middle School until I was 13, and then spent 5 years at Full Neck, just outside of Leeds, between Leeds and Bradford in Pudsey. Now, I was 2 years behind when I joined. So how do you in this or anything in life get ahead when you're so far behind? And the reason I mentioned this is because yesterday I was talking to my son. He's 8 and he didn't want to do English comprehension. So rather than just saying to him, look, you've got to do it. I mean, we did all of those. You've got to do it. It's important. The other kids do it. It's important to understand all the rest of it. We thought, look, he's just not going to get this done. He doesn't like writing. He finds it difficult. He's 8. All the things I found when I joined Full Neck before I got the prizes for best performance in GCSEs and then best performance at A level, the maths prize, the physics prize, the chemistry prize, the German prize. I was behind by 2 years. And how do you, when you're 2 years behind, get ahead? And I wanted to teach him the same skills of resilience. Whether you use that in this or in my business of investing, whatever it is you're going to use it in. And there were certain key lessons that I learned. First of all, observation, and I got an edge. Obviously, determination and resilience is what we're trying to teach my son, that you've got to find, you've got to be determined and get resilience. But that in and of itself doesn't mean much to an 8-year-old. But at 13, I found an edge. One of the edges was one day I saw the religious studies teacher, Mrs. Grills. I noticed she had a teacher's book, and it was then something which now everybody's heard of, but back then nobody had heard of at all. It was a Let's guide, Letts. And I thought to myself, I wonder if that'll explain the subject better. So I asked my dad to take me to the bookstore, and it was the Ostick's bookstore in Leeds, if you know it. I don't know if it's still there. Quite a little street. And there was a problem. The problem was, we didn't have loads of money, but and given how much they were paying in school fees when I was 13, which they never had to previously, I didn't want to say to my dad, can you cough up some more money? And so what I used to do, and again, the edge through observation, and this is the same thing you got to translate into anything in life. What's the edge? What's getting people ahead? And it's never something that you think. Was I'd buy one of the books, the cheapest one, keep the receipt, and apologies to all bookstores out there, but what I worked out was I could return a book twice before they'd start saying, look, you can't keep returning on the same receipt. And what I would do is not break the spine, okay? That was one. The second thing that I learned was, well, look, I can't keep going back and returning the same books. So I'd buy one, then I'd go upstairs. Now, the upstairs at Ostick's in Leeds was dead on a Saturday morning because no kid wants to be there on a Saturday morning. So it was quiet. So once you bought the first book, you'd take the stairs at the back of the room, you'd go upstairs, no kids are there. That's where the study guides were, all the different study guides. And I'd sit there for an hour or two. But because I'd bought a book, they'd leave me alone. And I'd go through the books and read the materials, whether it was maths, chemistry, whatever it was, or whatever the subjects were, geography, whatever else. Okay. Now, I started at 13, 2 years behind, just to put some context, ended up with straight A's, okay, and the prizes that I mentioned. The other edge was I knew, and I don't know where I discovered this, that every British library is obligated, or it was back then, to provide any book you ask for. So with my aunt number one, aunt number two, they'd be members of a library, Bramley, because we lived in Bramley at that time. And they'd have, I think it was 2 or 3 library tickets you could have, or kids could have 1 or 2, and then adults could have 3. So we'd all go together, and I'd make sure they got my books for me alongside mine. So I might have 5 books at a time. And you had to return it a week later, I think it was. And you could extend it once. I think you couldn't extend it more than once. So that gave me access to a lot of books with the ability to extend. But there's more than one library. Armley Library, and I'd alternate between the two for the books that I needed. All the study guides, chemistry, and like I said, all these subjects. I've got a lot of subjects, and you'd want them for a while. So that helped me. And libraries, my God, they're phenomenal. They're God's gift. Well, books are God's gift. Knowledge is God's gift. There's another one. Memory. I realized this isn't just about studying. It is about learning how to improve the skills of studying, just like with investing and what we do now on the Great Investments Program. It isn't just about saying to people, buy this stock. It's about understanding their psychology so that they know not to panic, not to get bored because they've been empowered. So similarly with me, I knew passing exams was one thing. Coming top and getting 90% plus in, say, physics A level, doing the paper in lunchtime for fun, Mr. Fielden, thank you, was because I knew that if I could master memory, and there must be studies on it, and I'd read the newspapers, all the rest of it. I can't remember what it was, Radio Times or something. These little adverts at the back about mastering memory. And this is about the time, I think, Buzan and mind maps were coming out and stuff. So I ordered these books, and these books were always mail order returned. So you could view them at home and then return. So when they'd come, I'd open them carefully, don't break the spine, look through it, and then return them. I couldn't afford the amounts that you had to be able to afford. And there was these tapes you could get for improving memory, where when you go to sleep, it sort of, you listen to it as you're sleeping, and it sort of tells you. I still remember to this day, obviously I would, because it's about memory. And it taught you how to pinch these fingers when you're remembering and these when you're recalling. And many a time in exams, my mind would freeze, and I'd just press this and I'd relax and I'd go, right, what was it? And it might be an acronym or whatever, would come back to me. And there's still little techniques like this which would help. Now, there's a whole different issue about how useless are schools, that this is how you've got to learn stuff, and now we've got AI. Does any of it matter? But the point that I was trying to get across to my son was not just resilience and determination, but we'll find a way. There will be techniques. If it is holding a pencil that you find difficult, well, let's look into, does a wider grip help? Is there another issue that you might have with all of that? But we're certainly not going to just give up and cry. Because I tried that, and it used to happen with German well before I got the German prize, because that was the subject I'd chosen. And the trick there was, thankfully, the German teacher, Mr. Johnson, would do lunchtime lessons. So whilst all the other kids were playing out, I would do German. I don't know whether it was once a week or twice a week for the kids to catch up, because there were a couple of kids who joined at the age of 13. And I was one of them. And so lunchtimes would be persisting and finding that edge, and it took a bit of time. There was another edge I got, which is I found who was the kid who was the best. And when I joined, it was very clear. It was a chap called Vadanan. That was his surname, Surya Vadanan. Amazing kid. So I said to him, look, I'm no threat to him. I'm in the B form and near the bottom of the whole class at 13. This is long before becoming an Oxford Fellow and all the rest of it. I said, can I borrow your books? And he said, no chance. I said, look, I tell you what, can I borrow your books, but only at lunchtime in the classroom, and I'll hand them back at the end of the lunch hour. And I won't touch, I won't write on them or anything. You can keep an eye on them and look at them. And thankfully, he relented. He said, yeah, okay. But definitely couldn't take them home, which I could understand. And I looked at it and I thought, oh my God, that's the standard. Knowing the standard is so important in life, because if you don't know what the standard is, or you think the standard is just, you just write some notes and hopefully you tidy them up. No, he showed me the standard was beautiful. He had books which were written in a way, you looked at it and you thought, that is art. It was just so gorgeous, different colors and all of this. And he'd come top in everything in the end. I don't know whether he regretted it, but I beat him in the very final set of exams. It took right up until the very final set to win, but winning I was able to do. And he changed schools for his A levels anyway after that. But the point is, find that standard, find that edge. It's not just what's resilience. There are tactics. What is the tactic? What is the people who are winning doing? Now, for us on the Great Investments Program, it has always been, what are the Nobel Prize winners? What's the research papers from the very best? Not who's my dad's IFA friend. It is, what's the academic literature saying? What's Goldman Sachs Private Bank and the biggest hedge funds saying to their clients? But the funds which are got billions and have been generating at least 40% per annum. So we never take a monopoly on knowledge. We never say, well, we know everything and nobody else does. Okay. What we say instead is, well, actually, what do the very best in the world with a proven track record? Okay. Just like Badman had a proven track record. What are they showing? And then we cross-reference it and say, right, is this right? So what I used to do when I found a subject difficult, like initially economics at Oxford, I remember telling Terry O'Shaughnessy, my tutor at Oxford, I'd say to him, oh, Terry, he said, how did you do this? And I said, well, I got 3 different textbooks because I thought one of them just isn't explaining it clearly enough for me, especially despite getting the math prize at A-level, the maths and, economics was, I don't know, my brain switched off or whatever. It just felt difficult. So I get different books to get the same explanation. Now, of course, you've got AI now. You've got Notebook LM or whatever to be able to do explanations for you. So life's got a lot easier. But what I wanted to get across to people was, this is how we use it in the firm, how we're using that same resilience from childhood. And very often it's the lessons you learned in childhood, which were the most difficult years of your life. People say they're the best years of your life. Screw that. You're going to have a pretty miserable life if those are the best years of your life. It was the most difficult time of your life. And the point of it was that you found ways around. That's what it is. It's like Lord of the Flies. You had to find ways to survive. Well, you, for some reason, forget that when you're in the big wide world. And it's finding those edges and thinking, right, okay, Nobel Prize winning literature, Goldman Sachs research, data that we can now pull up. I spent the weekend pulling up data and doing what Renaissance Technologies used to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds doing as a hedge fund 30 years ago. I was able, literally in the park, watching my son playing in the sand. I'm watching it and I'm thinking, hey, why don't I get AI to pull up the data of the last 26 years, open, high, low, close prices and test certain hypotheses? And the great thing about doing chemistry and physics at A-level and biology at GCSE was the scientific approach: hypothesis, test with experimentation, look at the results, what comes up. I wanted to share that because hopefully, whether you're a child or whether you're a grown-ass adult, that element and some of that story will help. It's a personal story. It's not the usual, hey, go buy Microsoft stock or Lam Research or whatever. But yeah, it was occurring to me and I thought it was worth sharing. I hope you liked it. Feel free to comment and all the rest of it. And like I said, no, didn't grow up rich. My mum was a nurse in the NHS. My dad was a shopkeeper. So yeah, it was only later he went on to, like many parents, become extremely wealthy, and perhaps they shouldn't have put me in this school because it was way beyond what they could afford. The other element I should add is I would sit at the top of the stairs at our home, 118 Green Hill Road, sit at the top of the stairs, and I could hear them downstairs. They didn't know this, talking about how they're going to meet the fees. And I'd be petrified going to school thinking, oh my God, is the headmaster going to come in and say, you've got to leave? Of course they don't do that. Fulneck's been a lovely school. What they would do, what it would do for me is create this obligation on myself to make sure that all their sacrifices, it wasn't enough to get an A. No. I had to get the prizes. I wanted them. They never pushed me for that. They actually were worried. They'd say, you should go out more, have more fun in life. And I did, because I've also got some cricket trophies over my shoulder. And we used to play until it got dark. And that's the other thing about studying. So if you get it right, you don't have to do tons of it. You're doing it efficiently, effectively, and get out there and enjoy and have fun as well in life, because it's that mental health, that energy, that oxygen that goes through. And I think it's why schools teach sports. So I chose cricket and badminton, even though we had a ski club and a golf club, because we weren't rich enough to go skiing and playing golf and asking parents for that. But a cricket bat you could ask for, Indian. And then getting in the first team and getting the cricket colours was just, I was as full as pride of that as getting A's in the subjects, because it was important for me to be an all-rounder, not just in cricket. I bowled and occasionally, rarely, I wasn't the best cricketer, but in the team. But occasionally, I think there was one game where I got to open the batting and the bowling, which was great. I'm not sure why they had me do both, but anyway, the point is being an all-rounder was important metaphorically and in cricket as well. And I hope kids will be taught that. Mine never pushed me. They weren't the pushy type parent types. it was a love of learning that I got, because when we had a shop in Cardiff, where I went to Monkton House boys' school for a short while, hated it. Everything was in Welsh on TV. So my dad had bought some encyclopedias, Virtues encyclopedias. I wish I could get my hands on a pair somewhere. They were the best set of encyclopedias I've ever read. And they'd have all these lovely images, and I just fell in love with learning from there. And to this day, I explained to my son, you know, how is it that the bee knows to come to the flower, and the flower is positioned in such a way that the pollen ends up on the bee and the bee then pollinates elsewhere? How is it that the cherry has the seed inside the juicy, lovely, fragrant, bright flesh, so that the bird knows to eat the flesh, get fed, and accidentally swallow the seed and then poop it miles away with fertilizer? And sort of explain to him the fascination of that and the miracle that is a leaf, and how sunlight gets converted into energy and oxygen, which we can then breathe, and carbon dioxide is taken out, and how that helps us as humans. You know, just sort of the fascination of it, let alone when I speak to him about atoms and the miracle that is, you know, everywhere around us. And I want him to have that fascination with learning. And that's what's come up with AI. There'll be those who are fascinated with it, as we are with the Great Investments Program. Absolutely fascinated. How can we use this to improve our communication? Not how do we create a crystal ball to see into the future and what's going to win? No. Our communication, so people understand, so they don't panic, they don't get bored, and they get those returns that they should have. And how do we promote this to a broadest possible audience, so those who got left out don't remain left out? I was privileged. I want those who came from my background, armly, no money, to get up that social ladder as well. And for me, it was investing that did it, riding the coattails of the biggest companies in the world. Because, hey, for a little boy from Armley, he's not going to get access to that kind of stuff. So he's going to ride their coattails by slowly investing. But that's a video for another time. Okay, thank you.